doesn't really kick in until maybe.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 27th meeting of the Cass Clay Food Commission. It's Wednesday, November 13th, 10:30, and I'd like to welcome everybody. We do have a quorum, so we'll be able to take some action on a few items here today. And I'd like to begin with just a quick note regarding Vern Bennett, who was a member of the Food Commission, of course, and the Cass County Commission. In September, he passed away, and Dr. Bennett was known for his willingness to serve and his thoughtfulness as a leader and his genuine nature. In 1971, he was named the superintendent of Fargo Public Schools. During his 28-year tenure, he started the Woodrow Wilson Alternative School, played a crucial role in launching the Trollwood Performing Arts School, and was honored with the naming of Bennett Elementary School in South Fargo. After retiring in 1999, he jumped back into public service in 2002 as a Cass County Commissioner, an office he held for 15 years. He was also a member of the Fargo Dome Authority and served on a multitude of community boards and task force. His life's work was influential in shaping the community we know and love today. The Cass Clay Food Partners would like to take this time to extend its gratitude to Dr. Bennett and his commitment and dedication to the Cass Clay Food Commission. And I had the privilege of working with Vern on different committees, and I'm sure some of the other ladies and gentlemen here have as well. And one thing, I guess, if I was going to describe him, is he was always engaged. Any meeting he came to, he's obviously very well educated, but he's very learned and up to date on things. He'd come and he'd have a lot of questions and bring a lot of good points to the discussion. So he'll be very much missed, and we do appreciate his service to our committee and our group here, but also to the community as a whole. So rest in peace, Vern. Next item would be to approve the order and contents of the overall agenda. Are there any revisions? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item C is review and action on minutes from the May 8th and September 11th meetings. I don't believe we had a quorum on the last meeting to approve the 1 minutes, or we may have missed them. But at any rate, if you got the opportunity to review them at your leisure, I guess I'd entertain a motion on those.
I'll make a motion to
I'll second it.
approve the May and September meeting minutes as noted.
I'll second.
Okay, and second by Jim. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we got the commission check-in, and if you have anything you'd like to just bring to the public and our sports staff at this time, we'll just start down with John. And if you don't have anything, that's fine. You can just move right along.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would like to make a note to the board that my Wednesdays are not my best day to get to your meetings, and I'm glad when I can get here, and I apologize when I can't, but I appreciate the work you do.
Jim Austin's Dover City Council. We're working on a couple developments out there.
No items to note from Clay County.
Chelsea Johnson, Horace City Council, and I'll be speaking a little bit later.
I have nothing.
Jeremiah Tech, nothing of note.
Sarah Watson Curry, possibly of note. We are going to be hosting a conversation in January, tentatively January 8th at 7 p.m., a discussion about wild turkey management. So that might interest folks in this group. We are working to have a DNR representative, and as you can imagine, they're busy with deer hunting season right now. So we've been working to coordinate with them so I can keep you guys abreast of that information.
Kayla Pridmore, if you're up for a little drive, this Saturday in Perham, Minnesota, there's going to be a really interesting talk by Sandra Steingraber. She's often called the modern Rachel Carson, the author of Silent Spring. So it's going to be all about pesticides and how they affect human health. So 1 o'clock in Perham.
Good. Thank you for all your input. We do have a few members of the public I see out there. If you'd care to speak, we do have a time set aside later in the agenda. And just ask if you'd please sign this sign-in sheet. It's not door prizes or anything, but we'd like to have your name for the record. So, very good, thank you. We're gonna move on to item number 3, single-use packaging material snapshot. Kim Lipitsky.
Long walk over here. In your packet, I think it's attachment number 2, I just wanted to make you aware of the final version of the single-use packaging material snapshot. At the September meeting, Whitney had done a presentation on the snapshot, and there was a suggestion to add something to it regarding flannel fizz. And that has been added into that snapshot. Flannel Fizz is a local soda company that's been selling its sodas at the farmers markets in the area, and they have been aiming to do a zero waste business, and they serve their sodas in refillable growlers and provide discounts to customers who return those growlers. So we have added that to the snapshot, so the version that you have now is the final version. And since we have a quorum today, then I guess we can vote for approval for that particular snapshot.
Okay, do we have any questions of the board members?
I'll make a motion to approve the items as noted.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any discussion?
I am Flannel Fizz, so if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them whenever.
Your name is Jeremiah.
Love your name.
All right, well, very good. Let's vote on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Against, same sign. Motion carries. It's like it's approved. Okay, we'll be moving on to item number 4, which is the Metro Food Plan, input on objectives and action steps. Kim and Abby Gold.
All right, at the last Food Commission meeting in September, Adam had presented an overview of where we are at with the Metropolitan Food Plan that included some background information, the indicators that we're going to be tracking, the public input process, the goals, and the next steps. So today we wanted to kind of pull out the goals, objectives, and strategies section of that draft plan. They were developed based on input from the public input process, community partners, as well as steering committee member input. This is a draft. We want to review what is currently in there and gather any additional input that you may have or thoughts that you may have as we work through this section. So as we go over these, you'll see there's a lot of content in here. Once we review what the objectives and strategies consist of, Abby's going to kind of walk us through a process to help digest some of this material and get us thinking about how we can apply some of these strategies in our local jurisdictions or in the agencies that we work for. So basically there are 5 broad goals in the plan. The first one is to create an inclusive, well-connected, and economically viable food system. This goal kind of takes a look at the entire system, the whole system, and how connected it is, and working to also take a look at the economic impact that a food system can have. The second goal is to provide equitable access to safe, nutritious, affordable, and culturally appropriate food. The third broad goal is the impact on health, and that is to create opportunities to achieve a healthy lifestyle and reduce the risk of chronic diseases. The fourth goal is to promote self-sufficiency through food skills education and food production opportunities. And the fifth goal deals with sustainability, and that is to support efforts that promote ecological stewardship and resilience. So I'm going to go through the different objectives that fall underneath these, as well as a couple of strategy examples. And if you look in your packet, or at the bottom of your packet, there's just a listing of these. And as we go through the goals, objectives, and strategies, it might be helpful for you to kind of go along with that as we go through them. I do want to note that this is kind of a work in progress. You might notice that there's some overlap with some of the strategies that can fit under several of the different goals, but we tried to pick the goal where most things fit the best. So I have a slide with each of the broad goals and the objectives that are underneath each of those goals. So this is goal number 1 with the objectives listed, and then I'll cover a few of the strategies that follow underneath those objectives. So if you refer to your handout, and for those of you in the audience, we do have some extra handouts in the back as well to follow along. So the first goal of the creating an inclusive, well-connected, and economically viable food system, the first objective under there is to develop local food and agriculture businesses. And a few of the strategy examples might be to ensure staff support to help local food producers navigate city and county policies and codes, or to provide training on food production, farm and business management skills and technology. A few examples of strategies. Objective number 2 is to expand workforce development and readiness to prepare community members for successful food system employment. So under there, you could do strategies could include create skills and technology training opportunities for jobs and careers in food management, culinary arts, and the agriculture sectors, or support establishment of high-quality jobs in food-related sectors. Objective number 3, increase local food purchasing. A strategy might be to develop partnerships to support the adoption of local food purchasing guidelines and policies, or to consider things like buy local consumer campaigns and coordinated efforts to support the farmers markets in the area. The fourth objective is apply equity principles to local government food systems efforts. So a strategy might be to develop new relationships with community groups and businesses working with underserved and traditionally marginalized residents to identify collaborations to address community needs. Or possibly target entrepreneurship support to help minority-owned and ethnic food businesses. Objective number 5, promote local food, farming, and agriculture heritage events. Things like promote and attract events that celebrate and enhance area agriculture and local food activities. And the last one is more the infrastructure type thing, working with decision makers and community leaders to continue to strengthen our local food system. That's to kind of support the work that we are doing here, supporting the local food system network, which is the Cass Clay Food Partners, and the Food Policy Council, which is basically the Food Commission here, working with leaders and city officials to address food systems issues and include them in local growth and comprehensive plans. So that is objective number 1. For objective 2, that's to provide the equitable, safe access to safe, nutritious, affordable, and culturally appropriate foods. There are 5 objectives underneath that one. The first objective, consider initiatives to make healthful foods more affordable. For example, support public food assistance programs with families and for families with children and seniors, or to support expansion of things like the Double Bucks program at farmers markets and grocery stores. The second objective, strengthen collaboration with community partners to ensure all residents have enough food. That could be, a strategy might be to analyze the current demand for emergency feeding assistance with community partners and identify the gaps and pursue needed change. Or to support efforts of local organizations, coalitions, and initiatives working to address the root cause of food insecurity and hunger in our community. And later on today, we'll do a little presentation from the Hunger Coalition. The third objective there is to celebrate diversity and cultural heritage as part of food-related activities and promotion. An example of a strategy might be to promote diverse food traditions held by area residents as part of community campaigns. And then the fourth one there, reduce built environment and transportation barriers that limit food access. So a strategy could be to assess policy barriers that might prevent grocery stores locating in recognized food deserts, or continue to operate MAP bus transit routes to include access to grocery stores, food pantries, and farmers markets. And then the last objective there is to work with community agencies to assure food safety regulations that are clear, implemented, and consistently enforced. So that's goal number 2. For number 3, creating opportunities to achieve a healthy lifestyle and reduce the risk of chronic disease. And this includes not only locally grown food, but this also includes access to healthful food in general. So objective number 1 might be to make healthy food choices more convenient and accessible. So a strategy could be to develop policies that support healthier environments throughout the community, or establish policies that increase the availability of healthful foods served in child care centers, schools, concession stands, hospitals, and so forth, or increase the amount of healthful foods that are distributed through our local food banks and emergency feeding networks. Objective number 2 under there is to adopt procurement guidelines and contracts in public spaces which offer food that ensure the availability of nutritious food options. Or objective number 3 could be to provide support and incentives to restaurants and stores that sell food to limit unhealthy options and improve the availability and affordability of healthy food. So for goal number 4, which is to promote self-sufficiency through food skills education and food production opportunities, objective number 1 is to expand urban agriculture and community-based food production. Strategy under there would be to work with city leaders to assure ordinances and zoning codes support and allow residents to grow their own food, or to expand community garden opportunities and support, assuring sufficient plots, equipment availability, gardening education, and so forth. Objective number 2, expand reach and awareness of public programs and education opportunities that build preparation skills such as meal planning, cooking, food preservation, and so on. And then number 3, work with state leaders to assure adequate funding for food skills education through federal programs such as SNAP and WIC and so forth. And then the last goal is the sustainability-focused goal, and that is to support efforts that promote ecological stewardship and resiliency. Objective 1 is to protect the soil and water quality in our area. Number 2 might be to support vegetation management practices that promote pollinator habitats. Objective 3, increase the opportunities for food producers to utilize season extenders and storage opportunities that expand capacity to grow and preserve healthy food. Objective 4 would be to foster a community of food waste reduction, maybe developing strategies to target public events such as the zero waste events, or develop communication campaigns that promote waste reduction and encourage behavior change. Objective number 5, encourage food recovery practices and policies to supply safe, nourishing food to families in need. Strategy under there might be to support, promote, and fund gleaning efforts with the local producers, such as the Glean ND program that has been started this past year. Number 6 would be to create composting programs and policies for commercial, institutional, and residential settings. So a strategy could be to maintain and expand public outreach funding and training to support backyard composting. So these are the 5 objectives, or 5 goals with the objectives and some of the proposed strategies underneath. It's a fair amount of information to digest, so Abby's going to kind of help us think through this and how they can relate to us a little more.
Thank you, Kim. Yes, so what I wanted to do now is just have us look at the goals, objectives, and strategies and try to digest it with some questions that I have for everybody in the room to reflect on. So the first two questions are will be a self-reflection with a share to your neighbor. And then I have two more questions that we will have full group discussion about. So all of you have the paperwork with the goals, objectives, and proposed strategies in front of you. What I'd like you to do is just look through that and circle words or phrases that stand out to you. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. Okay, now what I want you to do on your own is to reflect on which goals and objectives, not the strategies, that you personally relate to. So which one of the goals is something that you feel like something that means a lot to you and the work that you do, or what you'd like to see in the community? And what are some of the objectives that also tie into that personal side? So the objectives all have stars, and under the objectives or asterisks rather, and under the objectives are the strategies. You don't need to contemplate those. Maybe pick one or two. Okay, so we're going to take a little bit of time to meet with our neighbors, so you can cluster in threes or twos, depending on who you're close to. And I just want you to take a couple minutes to talk about those words and those goals and objectives that resonate with you, and we'll come back after that.
What do you think?
Well.
Here we are.
I wasn't really, I was like kind of thinking about something else when she told us what to do, but
You can leave, Ginny.
Okay.
inclusive.
So our microphones are all on. You probably don't want to hear me. I have 4 children that are voracious eaters. And one thing that I've consciously done recently is I've heard a lot about the dairy crisis locally and dairy farmers. And so we've made this effort to support local food in terms of
Yeah, they're like the pillars.
Yeah. I added that into the, because I had no place to put all this business stuff.
Yeah.
But I think our steering committee, we can kind of work through that too to finalize some of those.
Yeah. And then the strategies are, what I would probably do is pare down some of the objectives.
Oh, the objectives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, so it's manageable for the time frame.
Right. Because we'll probably talk about this at the steering committee, but I'll probably send some stuff out ahead of time since you won't be there, and I don't think Lori will be there.
Oh, for our next meeting. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oh, I remember that and can't remember my own life. I'm not that old.
Okay, let's come back together. So your conversation will kind of lead us into the next questions that we have. So now I want to broaden it out to the jurisdictions that we all represent or live in. And so as a general discussion for all of us to engage in, the next question is, which goals and objectives are what you think to be most important to your jurisdiction or your sector, and why?
It's easy. Sounds good.
Jeremiah, you want to talk? Oh, you can.
So as a producer, the first goal is most important to me because we operate within the local food system. And that's where most of my pain points are grouped under there
Okay.
specifically.
So what objective under there would be the most critical?
Probably balancing between local food and agricultural business development and workforce development.
Okay, good, thank you. What about the jurisdictions? Chelsea?
Yeah, so I guess overall, it's really hard to choose because I think all this information is the foundation for a successful community. You know, a lot of people look at new buildings and they're up above the weeds, but, you know, if you don't have these things, the health and wellness of your community isn't gonna be at its best. So it's hard to choose, but I think for Horace, you know, we're small and we're just starting to grow. You know, waste reduction, I think, is really important, and I think working with the kids and making sure that our kids have what they need to grow healthy, into healthy adults is
So
really important.
you see these as really foundational for the health and well-being of the whole community, these goals and objectives?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody should be thinking about these on every aspect.
Thank you.
I'll echo what Chelsea says. I think it goes beyond the borders of our municipalities and counties. It's an area-wide thing. I think it's very important, like you touched on, the education and supporting education, getting people involved in whether it's culinary arts or production or whatever. I think that's important. But personally, and again, it goes beyond our borders in West Fargo, but the thing that touches on me the most is because I've always had a concern about this, is strengthening collaboration among community partners to ensure that all residents have enough food. And boy, you think we have good-sized food banks and everything else, but yet they run into times where they're running out of food, and it's the same thing with the homelessness. And I think that's not just in Fargo or not in West Fargo or Clay or whatever county. That encompasses, the whole area, metro area and regionally. So that to me is a very big thing, but I think Chelsea touched on this as well, as a lot of these objectives, they go beyond municipalities. Should involve parks and schools and social services, and there's a lot of different entities that have to work towards achieving these objectives. If you just depend on a city or a county to do it,
Right.
you might get a little bit of it done, you're not gonna get it all done.
Well, thanks for recognizing that, because this is why we have the seven jurisdiction commission, because we recognize that it's a concerted effort across our region to create strategies around these kinds of goals and objectives.
Abby and Kim, you know, what occurs to me is reading between the lines on your policies and objectives here, I think I'm seeing an effort to destigmatize hunger and poverty and those circumstances. But to me, that's the underlying issue here for a lot of folks is their life situation and us trying to provide help in a way that's the barriers are gone, but the stigma's gone. And I kind of read that into this. I don't know if it needs to be said explicitly, but that's a big deal for folks that are affected, I'm guessing.
Well, I think goal 2 encompasses what you're referring to in some ways. And goes beyond that too. Any audience members that have add?
Can I chime in too?
Yeah.
I circled 2 before getting the assignment, so I feel like that was one I was drawn to. And to echo what Commissioner Strand said is that it's, you know, one of the points is it's the root causes too. So not just the empathy and understanding and destigmatizing, but also recognizing that we need to work at those root causes. And so, you know, we're constantly talking about the transportation barriers that come into access to healthy, you know, to healthy living in general. So that's one that hits me too. So I could have circled all of them, but that one struck me before the instructions. So.
Okay, we have 1 more minute and 1 more question.
Abby, can I
Oh,
follow up
go
on
ahead,
that? I'm sorry.
Jenny.
So this is a great cumulative list, and so I think it's hard to pick just one specifically because the county is really, Clay County is really an extension of the state, and so cities kind of deal with smaller pieces, but you know, there's so many things that Clay County is working with that I feel like touches every single goal pieces. We have public health in terms of providing a lot of the support in most of these, and rural Minnesota SEP is kind of dealing with skill and technical training and that workforce piece. The community action networks are dealing with the stigma on everything, especially food access for the elderly, but also transportation barriers. MetroCog's talking about just really the historical society, everything that we're working with is kind of touching with this, and so it's really hard to prioritize. But personally, for me, I think the increasing the local food purchasing is a huge deal. Even though it may cost a couple, 20 cents more a gallon to purchase the locally grown stuff and crystal sugar and then too from the food local food markets. So for me, that's what that is. It's hard to pick.
Yeah, thank you for economic viability. And so I did have 1 more question, but we're out of time for this segment. So this is a draft. These are draft goals and objectives and strategies, and some of the strategies came from the Minnesota Food Charter Network, Minnesota Food Charter rather. And so I think what the steering committee can help do is hone these down and then, put them into the Metropolitan Food System Plan, which everybody will have an opportunity to comment on. And we want to make the plan something that's achievable over a certain, amount of time, 5 to 10 years. So we have to take a close look at what's possible. And I think what I hear everybody reflecting on in this discussion is really how this is a multi-jurisdictional but also collaborative effort among many different types of organizations and policy making bodies that need to come together to to consider what has to be done in our communities to make well-being, to put that front and center, like Chelsea says. So thank you for these reflections, and you'll be seeing more from us as we refine the Metropolitan Food Systems Plan.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 5. Chelsea's going to give us a jurisdiction spotlight on the city of Horace, and I know there's a lot happening in Horace, so we're going to keep you down to about 10 minutes, though, so you
Okay.
for half hours.
Yeah. Well, I did want to give a shout out to Vern. I didn't know him besides this commission, but if I can only be so engaged and warm as he was. When Noelle called me about discussing our community spotlight, I didn't really know if I had much to say, and then we started talking, and I realized there are a few things going on that I can speak about. So I'll start off. We and I've brought this up here, but our local newsletter is one way to get some of these topics out to our community. Being such a small town, our resources are limited into how much we can incorporate. So Noelle talked about our June issue that she had noticed, where we talked about our community orchard. There was a food infographic that I got from the steering committee. I believe Nancy and her group had that for me to include. And in the issue, it also talks about our compost site, our yard waste site that we're working on getting it to be a compost site, and including wood chips for the community to use in their gardens. And we've got 4 really good issues so far that we've really stepped up on, and I've tried to include most of the main topics in our meetings into those issues. And then I talked with Noelle about the last meeting. We talked about the pollinator gardens and about how that would be a really great insert for our spring issue when people are focused on their gardens. So if the his name escapes me, but if he could put together even a 1-page kind of infographic, we can include it in our issue, and that information can get out to a lot of people, which is really important. Shelby, she is a new staff member at the city of Horace, and she's helping me with a lot of these different things, and so I wanted to introduce her, and she's going to talk a little bit about our farmers market that we started.
Hello, my name is Shelby Wheeler. I am communication specialist for the city of Horace. As Chelsea said, I work in conjunction with her, getting some great insights about the community of Horace and some of the need states and stuff. One of the large parts of my job is obviously the Horace Happenings, which is our newsletter where we push out a lot of viable information that we think is important to the community, and also get back a lot of feedback as well. When I first came on board with the city, one of the plans and one of the feedback from residents in the community was a pop-up farmers market. Horace is kind of a food desert, and there's not a ton of options for commerce, quick service food restaurants and stuff. Casey's is one of the gas stations available, so they do offer some healthy alternatives, but we're kind of we don't have as much available right there in our community. So having a pop-up farmers markets was really important. It was actually on October 11th, which, if you guys can remember, was when we had that fall blizzard. So, we had it originally planned for outdoors, which is typically what farmers markets are. We worked with the Horace Fire Hall and immediately was able to move it inside to their event space, which was great for us. We reached out to all of our community vendors that were going to be there that day, and kind of had the mindset of, if you guys are available and will be here, this is something that we really want for the community. And we had a phenomenal turnout, not only with vendors, but also from the residents that were really looking forward to it. We had pumpkins that were available, we had fresh produce, we had canned goods, we had locally sourced honey. You know, we had a lot of products, and some of the vendors were actually astonished, not only because we had some weather restrictions going on, but I mean, there was a couple hundred residents that came through. The fire hall also provided a community meal for a donation at will. So it was a really great event, and the feedback was overwhelming. A lot of stuff we can't plan, we were able to mitigate and had a great response. So we're hoping to do it in the spring, and continue having plans that will bring in, you know, vendors that we have around Horace, and also people in the community that are really taking the next step into bringing more food options and stuff to the city of Horace. So that's all I have, unless there's any questions or comments.
Thanks, Shelby.
Thank you.
So, yeah, with the farmers market being that, like Shelby said, we only have Casey's and one restaurant. It was a big hit with people. I look forward to seeing how that can grow next year. One thing that I did think would be great from this commission is there's a lot of small towns within 20 to 30 minutes of here, and getting some of this information out to them, I think would be really important. So if they can get a flyer that they can put out on their website or include in their local newsletter or a mailer that gives them kind of even a snapshot of what we've talked about over the year, or however we condense it. You know, they obviously don't have the staff or the time to commit to engaging in some of these things.
To follow up on that, we might be able to, with MetroCog's resources, the associate cities that don't have full membership on MetroCog, we can probably have MetroCog forward any minutes or agendas on those cities.
Yeah, there's so much great information in this group that it's you know, it's disappointing to see not more people in the audience, not more engagement, but it is the foundation for successful communities. If people are healthy and happier, then you're going to have a better community. Horace is working on a comprehensive plan. I was talking to Noelle that we should engage a food system language in that, so I'm going to follow up with that. Horace has about 1,000 new home lots in either available on the market now or coming on the market soon. So it is, you know, probably only a short time before we do have a grocery store. But in the meantime, you know, the farmers market is key, and also, you know, this gives us the opportunity to think about some of these important topics now before, you know, as we're growing, which is super important. We have West Fargo got a couple nice mixed-use buildings from Epic, and they have 2 large buildings planned for Horace with strip mall retail, but they will have a event plaza, so we can use that for food trucks and markets and different things that this commission talks about. A commercial kitchen is also planned for Horace, which is great to help with the food desert and bringing some of those local food items to our community. So yeah, that's what my list says. I wasn't very prepared in my speech on giving it, but I appreciate the opportunity. And I would recommend there's a few issues of our Horace happenings going around. There's 4 different issues, so check them out. We've been working really hard on those.
Thank you, Chelsea. I'm very envious, and if I can steal one of these, I'm going to, because I'd sure like to see one like this in West Fargo.
Yeah, that's great.
That's really good. So, thank you. Okay, we'll be moving on to item number 6, which is the Cass Clay Hunger Coalition update. Kim.
I'm not very tech savvy. But thank you, Chelsea. That was in Shelby. That was very good. And the steering committee had talked about getting some of the local jurisdictions and commissioners, since there's a lot going on out there, to kind of share what is happening and learn from each other. So we appreciate you doing that. Thank you. All right. The steering committee also thought it might be important to kind of give an update on what's going on as far as the local hunger coalition, which has just recently formed. And since I'm on the steering committee for that group, I'll provide an update for that today. So at the past Food Commission meetings, we've had several guest speakers on the topic or issue of hunger. September a year ago, Stacy Logering came from the Emergency Food Pantry and provided some information on what was happening, as well as invited us to the first annual Hunger and Health Summit. That was last October. And that summit was kind of a call to revitalize an old hunger coalition that had been active about 6 or 7 years ago. We also had Melissa Sobolek from the Great Plains Food Bank come and talk about the hunger survey that was done in 2018, and she provided some really good information and statistics on hunger in North Dakota as well as Cass and Clay County. And then in March, we had a presentation on the hunger snapshot that was developed through the Food Commission and approved by the Commission. So also during this past year, I mentioned that the Hunger Coalition has been reorganizing, and they reformed. They are meeting monthly. There's about 35 different local organizations that are involved from a variety of different groups, both emergency feeding groups as well as community organizations. And the group has worked through a results-based analysis process, which helped us to identify the vision of what we want and what the end results are as we move forward. So the vision of the group is we see a healthy community built on collaborative solutions that supports equitable access to food while addressing the root causes of hunger. So 4 focus areas were identified, and they are food insecurity, food access, health and hunger, and awareness and engagement. And in each of those areas, an end result was identified, and I'll just go over the hunger and health one. The end result for that is that our community actively supports practices and policies that recognize hunger as a health crisis. And one of the strategies to use to get there, or a key strategy, is to analyze current practices and policies to establish a guiding framework, since we can't do much in that area until we know what's out there and what's happening. So moving forward, the second annual Hunger and Health Summit was just held October 30th, and the group is currently working to update their work plans or establish their work plans to meet those 4 different end result areas. The next Hunger Coalition meeting is December 3rd. It usually runs from 8:30 to 9:30 at Fargo Cass Public Health. They're always the first Tuesday of every month, and everybody's invited, the community's invited, and if anybody's interested in getting involved in the group, they sure can. We're also working to establish a social media presence. So we've got a Facebook page and are working on a website. And then in your packet, there's a flyer with this information in there, and at the bottom is also a email address. So if you have any thoughts or anything that you wish to share to the Hunger Coalition, you can do so. So it's just a very quick review, but it is a group that is active in taking a look, and their work we will be able to kind of help tie to what we're doing with our metropolitan food systems plan, and to help that hunger and health issue kind of move forward. So,
Good. Any questions for Kim? Thank you for the update.
I do have one quick question.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Did you say the location where you guys meet?
At Fargo CAS, Public Health,
Oh,
at the Health
okay.
Department in Fargo.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Right, item number 7 is the Northern Plains Sustainable Agricultural Society and the New Roots Farm Incubator. Verna Cragnis, Executive Director.
Okay, I have the great pleasure of introducing Verna Cragnis, who's the Executive Director for the Northern Plains Sustainable Ag Society. And you all have a copy of the Germinator that she left for us, and I just want to read a little bit of what she wrote in her Executive Director summary. She says, I have gratitude this year also for the wonderful people I've met through getting involved with Northern Plains. In particular, there's a hardworking board that's been meeting now on a monthly basis for 2 hours by phone or 4 hours in person. Quite a commitment. So a huge thank you from me for their work. And Verna is actively involved in everything food and agriculture related in our community, and I'm very grateful for her. So thank you for coming to speak today and your presentations already.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'll add about Northern Plains, this is the 40th anniversary year for this group. Started as a group of farmers in North Dakota, but soon, before they got incorporated, recognized their name needed to be more regional. So they embraced the whole region. Members are in North Dakota and South Dakota, Montana, Minnesota, and farmers who for 40 years have been supporting each other in understanding and deepening their ideas, techniques, and support for sustainable agriculture. So I wanted to start in sharing today about the New Roots Farm Incubator. And for some of you who know some of the work I've been involved with here, this was a wonderful realization of a long time process to have farmers actually starting their efforts on land this year. And basically New Roots is a farm incubating cooperative. Now we'll see if I get this correct. Focused on helping people who are needing access to land and some additional support, technical support, to get started with their food efforts. We had rented land, a little over 2 acres north of Dilworth. And again, the objective is to help increase the number of emerging farm enterprises in our community. And the 5 individuals that were involved with New Roots this past year were all graduates of the Farm Beginnings program that was here and offered through farms and at the Lutheran Social Services in Fargo. We did have some challenges in that we had rain events that affected us. I didn't choose to show the lakes that arose in some areas. We actually had, for a couple of different reasons, farmers getting drowned out. So we had really 2 of the farms that were able to bring product to sale for this year. This is the founding board of New Roots, which included from from the beginning, 5 beginning farmers on the board. The way we support members are to facilitate a lease, have access to some shared equipment and facilities. Oops, I see my numbering system. Got a little bit cockeyed there. I didn't catch that as I was tweaking it this morning. So the plan is, as the cooperative grows, that there'll be cooperative marketing of products. For this year with the 2 producers, basically we did what I would call executive coaching for the farmers so that we help them find the markets for the product that they had. We also assisted them with record keeping, because the goal is to help them be able to file their Schedule F for 3 years and build their capacity then to secure an FSA loan in order to be able to establish their own farm enterprise. And this is really looking at farm definition. That's a little bit different than we sometimes think of immediately in the Red River Valley. USDA defines a farm as any place from which $1,000 or more are produced and sold during the year. It's also totally legitimate in terms of filing taxes to count the food that your family consumes. You just need to document that value, and so that can build toward accomplishing this $1,000 threshold goal. So we're, as I listened to all the goals here in the community, first and foremost, by having producers have access to land, we recognize they're helping to enhance their own family's availability to food, and then from there sharing the abundance and increasing their family's wealth with those sales. Some more statistics about average farms. I always have found myself wanting to help expand our understanding of what is a farm, and also to value the fact that small farms are good for the local economy. There was some research a number of years ago recognizing that money, as it travels through the local economy, it cycles 2 to 3 times through on a small farm, 1.9 times for larger farms, and only 1.6 times for the average consumer.
Verna, what is your classification of small farm?
Well, my classification.
Right, but in your statistics that you just shared.
Oh, in those statistics? This was done on community-supported farms, and they were probably in the range of 25,000 gross income to 100,000. There were 15 farms that were studied around the Twin Cities. It started with some research launched with our farm in Wisconsin back in the early 1990s.
Thank you.
And the United Nations has been calling once again recently for recognizing that a focus on small-scale agriculture, local food systems, regenerative organic systems are really, really important. Another reason why I've been so committed to working on this for a number of years is food preferences have not always been available. This is an example of one of our farmers. His son-in-law and daughter own this market, and so that's his outlet for what he sells. Funding for new routes for this year came from Partnership for Health, West Central Initiative Fund, individual donors, and we had lots of plans from Legacy Gardens donated, especially to help when the first batch of tomatoes got flooded out for some of our members. Okay, any questions about new routes before I go into a little bit more detail about the upcoming conference?
Go ahead.
Verna, just a question about the USDA loans. I'm not super familiar with them. Are they interest-free loans?
No, they're very low. very low interest.
Something that I recently learned from our Human Rights Commission, my understanding in the Muslim community of faith practice is to not accept a loan that has interest. And so this has been a big barrier in home ownership in our community. And so there's been conversation about could there be some sort of local funds to match that or mitigate that. But I was surprised to learn that. And I thought that was an interesting fact to keep in mind when we're looking at getting people into home ownership or a new career or
Right.
land. So.
Yes, and I understand that dynamic as well, and have started conversations with the West Central Initiative Fund toward identifying some ways to work with that dynamic. But also, one of the things that having access to land and building up your business without a loan, people own equipment that they've paid for. And so there's been resistance to, yes, having that as a goal, and it's not a requirement. Having access to land gives people the choice to build their business without taking out a loan. And so that's, I think one of the ways that we can accommodate that particular value.
So I'm very familiar with technological incubators, which normally take anywhere from 20 to 40% of the gross of who they incubate. How does this incubator operate under a similar model?
No. We're building a business plan that basically requires grant funding through the partnering nonprofit to support the incubator. And basically the choice that the farmers that are involved will need to make is to what degree will they want to grow the joint business work that they do. And then there would be, in that business plan, resources diverted to support those farmers who might then be taking leadership roles in pulling together that activity. But so that would be then funding the co-op to do the growth that they would design for themselves. But the technical support comes from the partnering nonprofit. And also what we've done is to set up a cooperative, and Bill Patry was the genius behind this from my point of view, but there's something called an indivisible reserve that you can have within a cooperative, and this allows our nonprofit Northern Plains Sustainable Ag Society to invest funds in the cooperative, then with the provision that we could, if the co-op ever goes out of business, we could extract those funds, meaning that if we buy a piece of equipment, then the piece of equipment could come back to Northern Plains to be redirected to someone else. One of the things that was part of what I was trying to create was, because I see the need for farm incubation to be so massive. And the models that we have in Minnesota have required either partnering with an established nonprofit and creating a really huge program area of their budget on leased land, or in the case of Hoffa, acquiring a huge parcel of land and creating a huge ongoing infrastructure. And that's one approach. And what I'm trying to develop here with Northern Plains as sort of the host is something that could be quickly and widely replicated, and that is to have these small cooperatives that could have funded strategic support to get started in a local community where there's an opportunity to lease land from a friendly landowner. And you don't have to start a new nonprofit in order to be able to start farm incubation in a local community. And so with our regional basis, as after another year or two of developing the pilot here, then the hope that I have is that we can offer this as something that could be replicated in other places widely. So, other questions, or shall I launch into the conference? Okay, I'm happy to talk afterwards as well if you have continuing questions about this. So we have, for the second year, and I started as executive director in June, but I've been involved for a little over a year now with Northern Plains, helped to organize their conference last year. This year, we're having a similar format in that we start with a pre-conference film on the theme of the conference at the Fargo Theater on January 12th at 1 p.m., followed by a panel discussion, Dreaming of a Better World, and I'll show a trailer of that at the end, which tells you a little bit more about it. And then we have pre-conference workshops, and there are 2 this year, and Cultivating a Legally Resilient Farm, Farm Law 101 with Farm Commons. I should just give a little bit of an advertising because you could say, who would want to go to a workshop about farm law? I had the opportunity to go through a training day for ag service providers hosted by Farm Commons, and they make their workshops so engaging. And in the case of this workshop, there will be 2 farmers that are prepped as co-presenters to really share their legal questions and the choices that they've made as they have farmed as a case study, a live case study. So for any farm, this, I think, can be a really rich and exciting possible workshop. And then from the point of view of also bringing in something that reaches toward the most wide and diverse audience, we have Dee Dee Pershaus, who's founder of the Center for Sustainable Medicine. I'm reading a little bit of her biography because I knew I couldn't remember all of this, as well as the Land and Leadership Initiative, an online school. She's the author of 2 books, The Ecology of Care, Medicine, Agriculture, and the Quiet Power of Human and Microbial Communities, and Understanding Soil Health and Watershed Function. She grew up in a family of high-tech medical pioneers working in radiation and brain surgery. Seeing the often destructive effects of their work firsthand led Pershaus to pioneering work of her own. She developed a practice and theoretical framework for system-based ecological medicine, restoring health to people as well as to the social and ecological systems around them. She's been working increasingly toward engaging patients and the public in conversations about the relationship between soil health, shifting weather patterns, capitalism, and human health. So she launches the conference with her pre-conference workshop, and then she has several breakout sessions, including a couple on building a community of practice, which we're hoping really will help develop skills within farmers who want to really continue to deepen and strengthen conversations among themselves. Then we have our Taste of Agriculture event, which is a lovely hors d'oeuvre buffet by the Holiday Inn, but expanded to have a vendors hall, which has lots of tastes, sips, and nibbles of differing local and regionally produced products. And the conference itself is primarily on Friday and Saturday. The 2 keynote speakers, and I can see I had one more error there. Sorry about that. Making Your Hope in Agriculture Today is Gary Matheson, who's with the Farm Credit Council in Washington, D.C., and Developing High Efficiency and Regenerative Agricultural and Food Systems, a Forever Green initiative, is with Dr. Don Weiss, and he's from the University of Minnesota, co-director of the Center for Integrated Natural Resources and Agricultural Management. Friday evening, we're having a play, which has been written by Mary Swander, who's an Iowa poet laureate. Map of My Kingdom. Who's going to get the farm and what are they going to do with it? As we recognize the massive continuing opportunity and challenge of transfer of ownership of land over these coming years, we thought this might be a thought-provoking way to help initiate conversations and ideas. There will be a sort of talk-back session that evening after the workshop, and then also a workshop the next day that has been developed to sort of complement this and continue the themes. And then, so we have breakout sessions throughout the 2 days. And then on Sunday, we'll be gathering with Matt Russell, who's from Iowa Interfaith Power and Light, and for a discussion on the role of faith communities in climate change. So this is the conference agenda. I'm so excited to put all this down and say, wow, well, you get so into the microcosm of, have we got this speaker bio back yet? And so on. It's exciting to look at the whole thing. And so I thought I would conclude just by giving you a hint, if this worked right, of this film, which helps really to convey the essence of what we're trying to bring with the conference. And you'll recognize a couple of longtime Northern Plains faces in this as well.
I hear there was a newspaper headline that said Don Vetter no longer considered crazy.
Well, that wasn't me, that was my son.
Oh.
He's the one that wasn't crazy anymore.
From my perspective, David Vetter definitely was a pioneer.
Leaders like David Vetter paved the way to change the direction of agriculture.
We grow a variety of crops in a complex 9-year rotation. The diversity that we have in the rotation reduces any requirement or need to add additional pesticides like insecticides or herbicides.
Well, why doesn't everybody do that?
I think most people don't do it because it's more work and it takes more thought.
Questions?
Any questions for Verna? Well, it looks like if you don't have anything going on in January, I'm outside of sitting in the house and trying to stay warm, there's some activities you can go to. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Registration is available online with and information in an ongoing way, and there'll be a printed brochure available soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we've reached that point. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? Now is your opportunity. Don't all rush up there at once. I guess not. Thank you for attending, though, those that came here today. Okay, I guess I'd ask the commission up here if there's any comments, final comments, closing comments, questions, concerns, compliments. Looks like we got a lot of homework, so we got to go home and do a lot of studying before the next meeting, which will be, well, first I mentioned there is a next First Friday's meeting on December 6th, 2019, and our next commission meeting is on January 8th of next year. So, is there any further comments on anything? None, I guess get a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, leave. The rest of you can stay, because we're leaving. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.